Hi guys, it's me again, Hadism. So today we're gonna talk about our first deck profile in Vanguard Overdress, which we haven't done this before. We haven't done a deck profile since Overdress came out, and we're gonna start doing one right now. And the first deck list that we're gonna have a deck profile in Overdress is Orfist deck. Just as an introduction, the deck is not what you would think of a Link Joker deck, because like the art resembles the old Link Jokers a lot, especially like a Chaos Breaker, but the playstyle is very different from what we know of Link Joker. So in the past, Link Joker usually have this control playstyle which can lock your opponent and then draw a bunch of cards, but in a way I think it resembles the old Link Joker deck, which is it's a grinding deck. And some of you might agree with me, some of you might not. But I think usually in the Chaos Breaker deck, you draw to gain resource and drag your opponent to late game. This basically do the same in a different ways, but to the same end, which means to drag the game longer and have more stamina than your opponents. So this deck is a grind deck, and you beat down your opponent with a huge column, which is easy to call. And we're gonna start with the deck list right away. So first, we're gonna start with the right deck, and right deck is the new mechanic in Overdress, which you can write from the right deck instead of your hand. And this 4 is the right deck. It's pretty standard, I think. The cards really complement each other. Like the Great One, when you write the Great One, you get to search an order card, which is important for an Orfist deck. And the Great 2, when you play an order card, it gets plus 5k. And in rear guard, if you have order card in the set card, you get 5k. So it's a 15k attacker, which is really good early game, mid game, and that's the right deck. And we're gonna talk about the main deck, starting from the orders. So Brungate plays around orders. This is kind of unique. Not just orders, but they play around set orders. And there are two kinds of set orders, which is these two. So the Great 2 lets you draw a card when you play it, and the Great 3 lets you retire one from the row when you play it. And I bring this Blitz order at 1. This basically gives you 30k shield for that turn, for one battle, and it's very good against huge columns like Fairina, or against Dark States, which has huge columns, or maybe Mirror Match to some extent. Some people don't like to bring this and bring the order instead, but what I don't like is when you have too much of these orders in your hand. You can only play one order at a turn. So you playing an order is once per turn. You should remember that. So like having 2 in your hands means having one dead card in your hand that you can use to attack or to guard. So I decided to go with 2, 4, and 1. This is for the order list. And now on to the trigger. We have the 4 hero triggers per usual, and then 3 draw triggers. The reason why I only play 3 draw triggers is because we play one of the triggers. I think this the basic list right now is like using. I'm just gonna put the right tick over here. Okay, so the basic idea between having 3 draws and one over trigger is triggers is basically almost the same as draw trigger, because whenever you check it, where in damage or where in your drive checks, you get that 1 draw. And basically doing the same thing that draw trigger did, except with much more powerful effects and powers too. That's why it's called an over trigger. And we got the 4 crits and 4 frauds. So I don't play 8 crits because I think during the late game you want to check frauds more than crits, especially with Orfist skills. which then you can call out 3 tokens, and the tokens at 15k each. Usually at late game you have like 30k line in the left and in the right column. So if you check a front, that will be like 40k each. That means your opponent needs at least 15k to trigger shield to guard them. And for the deck that plays really into the late game, because you have such a good balance with this deck, I think of having 4 front is much better than bringing 8 crits, because criticals when your opponent is at 5 damage is pretty much useless anyway. And then we move on to the grade 1. Again, the idea behind this deck is stamina deck. It's a grinding deck. You want to go into late game with this deck, and I have this grade 1 is basically when this card is put into the Guardian Circle, you can control plus 1, and then it gets shield plus 5k. If you have Abyssal Dark Knight as your world, it gains plus 10k instead of 5k, so that's a 15k shield. That's more like extra trigger in your hand, and you can use it to guard more powerful attacks, which is sometimes you need like to guard 30k, you can just drop a trigger at one of these and then 1 counter blast and you're good. And as you might notice, this deck uses quite much of counter blast, so we need this counter charger, which is Bubble Mine. I think this card has gone quite pricey right now in comparison to what it was when it was first released, but yeah, it's very essential in this deck, because you refill the soul, which you use for activating like the orders that lets you draw 1, or of course the counter blast that you use for Orfist and bring out your tokens. That was 2 counter blasts, and of course still the counter blast for your grade 1 shield. And you're gonna need Bubble Mine to just counter charge, especially during the mid and late game. It's really a free counter charge is good in the mid game, especially because then you can go to the late game with extra counter blast. And we got the 4 perfect guards. It's very standard, people run 4 perfect guards, and that's for the grade 1. And then we go into the grade 2. So this card from the right deck, we bring another 3 in the main deck. Again, as I said, it's a really good attacker, 15k attacker during mid game or even late game. 15k attacker means it got the same power as your token, but it can also intercepts. And in the case that you only hold 3 tokens and not have a field full of tokens in the mid game, this card is gonna help you a lot with the numbers, because then you will have 2 30k lines if you call your tokens on the left and right and not in the middle column. And an extra attacker always helps in this deck, especially if you try to push for damage. But what if you got pushed back for damage and this is your answer? So it lets you draw 1 when it comes to a rear guard circle with the cost of counter blast 1 and soul blast 1 if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight. It's really good for card advantage and for grinding in the mid game. So the mid game is a really essential part of this deck that you might want to control the mid game, and so you can go into late game more easier with draws and calling tokens and such. So you can save a lot of cards in your hand and still have decent power attacking your opponent. That is the main idea behind this deck. And this card also helps a lot with the draw. It uses a counter blast and a soul blast, which can easily be replenished with Bubble Mine. And then we go to the grade 3. The grade 3, we got these 2 that can attack 1 columns. Maybe you want to get rid of some annoying rear guards at the back and the front and trying to control your opponent a bit, or maybe you try to deny their counter blast. You can use this card, and then the 3 Orfist. So to those of you that didn't know, Orfist skill is basically if you control a world card as your set card, it gets power plus 5k, so it's an 18k attacker on its own, both in the Vanguard and both in the rear guard, but mostly you use it only on Vanguard, except if you have too many copies early game in your hand. And the Vanguard, if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, you can control Blast 2 to summon 3 tokens, which each got 15k powers, and that's basically how you drag out the game, because you don't use your hand to build up a formation. You get like Orfist 18k, it's its own 1 token at 15k, and you may drop an attacker or a booster in the same column as the token, and you get at least like 23k line to 25k line, and the other line will be 30 because it's token boosting token. Or you might want to place 1 token behind Orfist to make a very big power column in the middle that's most likely gets nullified or gets no guard. And this deck goes really well into the late game because you still get order that can draw you a card and have that card advantage always in your hands. It's very stable. It might not have that explosive turn that you are looking into, except the turn it personal rights, and it's not even that explosive. But this deck has really good stamina. You can really drag out the game and finish your opponent slowly. Just what you like in a Link Joker SQ deck. You know, like back in the day, if you play Link Joker, you want to finish off your opponent kind of slowly, except if you play the Electro, of course. But the point in this deck is that you finish off your opponent slowly and take out the resources one by one, and fighting for resources until the late game and win by power. Okay, so that's the deck list right here. You are welcome to try it and shout it out in the comments if you have something different you think about the deck list. If you want to play a different lineup of grade 1, grade 2, or maybe grade 3, or even the triggers, you can tell me in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I see you in the next video.